cameras trained specifically at your eyes because one of the symptoms of being exposed to chemical weapons is drowsiness. So what they do for the NBC school, they give you as much rest as you could possibly get. So a good night's sleep. They don't mess with you like they do in basic training and all that kind of stuff. And just because they don't want you to, just because they don't want to, well, basically the protocol is they strip you down, bleach you basically, shave you, give you the atropine and 2-pan chloride, and then go through the decon and right. all that kind of stuff. So it's a very rigorous method, and it's also very intrusive. But at the same time, you know, you're being exposed to a chemical weapon or something like that. So yeah, it's just the decon on its own is just it's insane. It's insane in what they have to do, but like at the same time, it's necessary because. I mean, it's you're gonna die from this if we don't. I mean, and this is the best way we could possibly do it. So
yeah, in the most horrific fashion. So.
Yeah.
All right. So okay. I think that's really what it was, Richard. More than anything else, was when you go through that training, and for us, it was always at a high level anyway. But you know, putting on that gear and all that stuff, I think it was just the mindset, like. This is so bad, I don't even want to think about it. You know, it's a mindset game. Your mind just goes, nope, we're not going to play this way. I don't want anything to do with this. It's scary enough to think about going into a dangerous situation without all that on top of it. It's just a horrific thought. But I do understand why people were like, no, we don't want. You know, this training sucks. It's a pain in the ass. It hasn't happened in 100 years, et cetera, et cetera. And then you go into a country that, they just used it 20 years prior, or less than that, you know, against their own citizens down in the southwest, southeast, excuse me. All right,
they also actually did it in the Kurdish areas as well.
That's right.
The Kurds actually know that very well, and you know that's obviously deep ingrained in their memory because I would have that in my memory as well. Yeah.
Well, of course. Yeah. Especially against civilians. Yeah. Okay, so here you guys are. You're in Kirkuk. You're setting up your base of operations. What were your missions like, and what was the ultimate goal of your division for their remaining time in Iraq?
So I want to say it was about mid to late May. They said that you know they did the whole CNN correspondent and news exclusive or whatever. They basically said there's no chemical biological weapons in Iraq, which is true, which we didn't find anything, or at least from what my unit, when we did our patrols and look in stockpiles in all the military bases that were around the area. Yeah, there was nothing that. Now, no one. I haven't heard anything that differed from that. But like, yeah, I mean, we were. I was, I was basically told to go in there first, which kind of sucked. With equipment and whatnot, and now it didn't happen very often. But like, I think I want to say it happened like 3 or 4 times. But you can imagine. How I was going to dump a brick, basically, because it's like, oh please, I kept on whenever I went into a suspected hotbed area, I was like, I kept on saying in my head, it's like, please don't be here, please don't be here. Thankfully, it wasn't, but like, I've heard reports of people going into bunkers with headaches. I don't know what that meant exactly. I mean, it was like my colleagues that were like NBC specialists as well. But I mean, the only thing I could think of that would cause a headache like that would be either dust, too much dust, or a nuclear weapon, but that had that was high in radioisotopes. But I don't think that's what we found. I think it was just the guy was, you know, had nasal or whatever. But anyway, but like that was like deep into a bunker that we found, but it turned out to be nothing. So thankfully. But like, yeah, so right around May, after doing that a couple times, and having my nerve shot for a good portion of it,
Sure.
they said that, and basically we were down by like 6 or 7 people in one platoon, and they said, "Hey, guess what? You just turned into an infantryman. Report to Sergeant Ruiz and start training to be an infantryman." I'm like, okay. So I was a 203 gunner. So basically a grenade launcher. A 203 is a grenade launcher. Um, and basically that was my function. I was a 203 gunner in third platoon, and basically I kicked in doors after that for about, I want to say, 6 to 8 months, something like that, because then we finally started getting replacements from Vicenza and people that were graduating from basic training. So, but yeah.
Wow. Coming in from basic training into so that's interesting, Richard. So how much close quarter battle training had you had before you were assigned to do this in the infantry, especially with and I've had the 203 myself. I was going to say that that doesn't seem to be the weapon of choice where you're pounding indoors, but okay. I mean, I know it's an M16 with a grenade launcher attached to the bottom of it. I get it, but that's also a heavy ass weapon to kind of haul around. So, what was the level of training before, and then as people started to join the unit, did you kind of watch out for these folks and get them up to speed quick? I mean, that's a horrible thing to be thrown into.
Well, yeah. Everything I was taught was OJT. I mean, I knew the basics. I mean, I knew how to clear a room, and I knew how to clear hallways and whatnot, how to cross a field and all that kind of stuff. But like when it came to actually, watching for windows and all that kind of stuff, that was not something that we were all trained in, obviously, because that's not what we're trained in basic. And then even when I was in before we even knew we were going to go into Iraq, they never pulled me off and said, "Hey, we might need you. You need to go over here and train in CQB." Yeah, that never happened. So, which actually I really wished I was more proactive back then about that, because that would have probably helped me quite a bit in learning. But I'm a quick learner. Obviously, I'm still here. And basically, yeah, I had to learn OGT. I mean, we had a building in Kirkuk. Basically it was abandoned. It had multiple hallway. It was basically your basic barracks building, and that was my training. Literally, that was my training with my squad. And I mean, there was like a couple other guys that had no training as well. I think our supply sergeant had to go out to or at least his assistant, I should say, not the supply sergeant, but his assistant had to come out with us, and then someone from operations, because I mean, there's no one going to be doing paperwork out there, or at least we haven't until we find a base of operations that's secure. So basically, yeah, the one of the ops guys, yeah, the assistant, supply sergeant, and then myself, all three of us went out to the line, and for a good, I want to say, 2 days, I got some really rigorous training. I mean, obviously without shooting the building up and all that, but like mock training. But oh wow, it was a lot.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, it's one thing I give the Marines a lot of credit for, because I don't think the other services do it as well. Is just my opinion is you train first to be a Marine in all things combat, regardless of what your MOS is. It does not matter. And then you move into your job, and then when you move into your job, you still continually train on what it's like to be in an infantry. I mean, it's just the way they do things. And we kind of saw that in Iraq full force, I think, from the other services where, the first incident that gained a lot of notoriety, which was really tragic, was the whole Jessica Lynch affair, right? I mean, essentially it's a small supply group that gets lost, gets cornered, and they did the best they could, but they really weren't trained effectively for combat. Just reading her story and her weapon jammed, and it was like that was the end of the battle. Knowing how to clear that weapon could have kept her from being captured in theory, right? I mean, overwhelming force and all, but it is fascinating because I don't think that the plans for the Iraq War went at all according to the script, right? That was definitely for sure. And so a lot of folks wound up getting trained in things they never thought they needed to be trained in. And they also, at the beginning of the war, felt that they could win it. I'll say it the way I know how to say it, on the cheap, right? They didn't go in there with a huge amount of force, and then a year and a half later, 2 years later, comes the surge. So I know that was a big turning point. I mean, you're taking on a whole country with fewer soldiers than they had holding Berlin in World War II, and I think that there was a lot of valuable lessons that came out of that, and unfortunately, a lot of people that didn't come home or got hurt because of I think two areas. They disbanded the military, so all these folks just wound up putting on civilian clothes and taking their weapons with them. The terrorists flooded in, and there was it just wasn't handled right, and then it was too small a force to take on all the different contingencies that went on over there. And so you saw a lot of folks like yourself, okay, new mission, which is great when you consider how talented the Army is, how talented their soldiers are, how intelligent they are, to be able to take on new missions in quick order, no doubt. But, it was definitely, as they say, every plan goes out the window the second it's instituted. That certainly did.
Well, and you're right. A lot of the, I mean, like obviously we had armorers with us, and they had their own connexes and vehicles out in Kirkuk, and repaired our weapons and whatnot. But you had so when Kirkuk actually was, or the airbase was actually secured, and when I mean by secured, and I mean that loosely, when the actual base was secured, they actually the Air Force put a perimeter around the whole entire thing. So MPs, or no, security forces, so SF. I don't want to really say SF. So security forces, all around basically in bell towers, and I want to say they were not even 200 meters apart from each other. But they basically, did a perimeter of the whole entire thing and called it secured. For the Army, we would never go without our weapon anyway. But you're supposed to carry your K-pot, so your helmet, your K-pot, and also your weapon. And then, of course, you're supposed to carry, I don't want to say 1 or 2 mags, is what you're supposed to carry. But some people, most of the time, everyone carried their own stuff, body armor and all that kind of stuff. Because don't get me wrong. We didn't see many. Not a lot. They didn't really attack the base that often. But when they did, it was like mortars coming in and basically pop shots at the bell towers. And or at least that's what I was told. Now this was 2003. Now it's a whole different world now. But they're far more armed now, but I can't even imagine what it's like now. But the Air Force didn't carry a weapon inside the wire, and I'm like, why would you want it? It's in the Army. I was like, that doesn't make sense. You're in a combat zone. This is considered a combat zone. They can shoot a mortar in. Why wouldn't you carry a weapon? It's like. And it wasn't obviously the security forces always carry their weapon. You knew who the security forces were, and but you knew the people that weren't, and it's just everyone that was in the Army, obviously except for the ones that were working, the forklifts and all that kind of stuff to get stuff off aircraft for the Army, that is. um, yeah, they everyone had their weapon on them, and if you didn't